Trust me, every hole costs you time and money, so you better get it right.
Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to Motor City Boat Werks. Let's get to work. I think it's worth taking a moment to kind of bring everybody up to date on where we are with the Pocket Trawler project. I've been away from working on the big boat for quite a while, as I went through the summer trying to get the Skipper 20 sailboat finished, and I had all my international travel. But now I'm back inside the boat works. It's winter here in Michigan, and it's time to get back to work on the Albin 27 family cruiser. This boat is going to be my Great Loop boat. It's going to be the boat that I take on the Great Loop trip around the eastern part of the United States and maybe up into the Pacific Northwest, maybe onward to Mexico or even the Bahamas. And there are a lot of components that go into this boat to make it livable and to be able to use it for some long-term traveling. The next major step for my Great Loop boat is going to be putting in the electrical system. This is a 120 and 12 volt system that's going to go into the boat, as well as all of the controllers and inverters and all this sort of stuff that are ultimately going to hook up to some lithium batteries and allow us to kind of live off grid. And you would think that it's a simple process of just running some wires and connecting things up, but it turns out there's a lot of little steps that need to be done before that. And I've started to think that I also need to make sure that I'm pretty much done with cutting holes and doing any type of fiberglass work on the inside of the boat. Now, I know we thought most of that was done when I finished phase 1, got all the dirty work done on the boat. Now we're into phase 2, but what I'm finding is that there are still dirty jobs that have to be done, insofar as doing cutouts for switches and for all of the instrumentation, cutting holes in the bulkhead to be able to run the plumbing lines and all this sort of stuff. And one of the biggest projects is probably cutting a hole in the transom to be able to install a stern thruster for this boat. All of this kind of work has to be done before we start putting in the wire. All of the holes, have to be cut. They have to be sanded. Any coring that's exposed, that's all got to be epoxied. Everything's got to be waterproofed. And frankly, I got to make sure that everything fits, that it's not going to interfere with each other. This episode is to bring you up to speed and show you some of the small things that I've been doing on the boat. I hope you stick with me. All right, it's a new day. I'm back inside the Albin 27 trawler. I'm in the V-berth right now. The galley is that way. This is the V-berth behind me, and the head is over there. And what I'm doing is I'm cutting some small openings in the bulkheads, these bulkheads that are around where the cabinets are in the galley and in the head, where I'm going to be putting in a 120 volt outlet. It looks basically like this, a GFCI outlet. And we'll have one outlet here at the galley on the side here. It actually services the V-berth. There's another one in the bulkhead panel there on the galley. You've seen me work on that before on the trim panel episode. And there'll be another one of these inside the bathroom in the head. And that way, someone can use a hairdryer. They can do whatever inside there. To do this, we haven't even got to the wiring, right? This is why I keep talking about you really got to plan everything out ahead of time and kind of think through all the steps, almost thinking ahead to finishing, to make sure that you have things in the right place before you ever start running wires. I know it's very fashionable on YouTube. People are restoring very large boats, and eventually they get bored grinding and sanding, and they want to jump ahead and start running wires everywhere and doing whatever it is they're doing. And it's tempting. I've been there myself, but it's something you don't want to do, because too many times I've run wires and then after the fact wanted to install a switch or an outlet, and lo and behold, now you're cutting into bulkheads or spaces where there's already wiring, and you run the risk of clipping a wire or cutting into something. And of course, nothing's energized yet. There's no batteries hooked up, but you run the risk later on that now you have a damaged wire somewhere down in the system. You don't even know about it. And it will corrode over time in a marine environment, especially in a saltwater environment, just in the air.
And so you got to plan everything out ahead of time. There's also a finishing aspect to this, which is it makes a lot more sense to put in your switches and outlets, the actual openings, before you do the wiring so that you can position everything properly. We talked about this on the episodes where I was building the helm. Everything's got to be in its right place so that it looks good. But more importantly, things will bump up against each other, and in the end, when you look at it, it won't look finished, and you won't be approaching any sort of professional results. It'll look like someone just started drilling holes in the bulkheads and started squeezing in switches everywhere without really thinking about aesthetically how they should look or even operationally where they should be positioned. I'll give you an example. So to put in one of these GFIs, it's got to go inside a regular electrical box, right? And because you got to have the wiring for this, inside the box, and the wires come into it. Okay, it's all protected, what have you. All right. So you got to put these boxes in, and they are one dimension, right? You can see that you need a space that's this big. It's got to be able to fit inside there so that the grabbers can grab onto the bulkhead and you can tighten it down. And this goes inside here, right? Something like that. And then, because of the way these things are going to be finished, right? They have a kind of this retaining plastic piece that goes on there, and then the switch plate or the outlet plate that goes around it, right? Makes it look all nice and finished. You don't see any screws. Ooh, very fashionable. We like it. Okay.
If you watch my channel, you already know Motor City Boat Werks has no sponsors. I get no compensation from any of the products or the companies that I talk about on my YouTube channel. I do put links in the show description for some of the items that I use if you want to try and find them. Amazon does pay a small commission if you use those links.
But this dimension, the outer dimension of this thing, is definitely not the outer dimension of this thing. It's bigger. So in my example here, I'm cutting holes to put these in. And I started simply just tracing out how big this has got to be. Boom, we're going to put these in, no problem. But in certain places, this comes close to other switches and other things. Well, suddenly, this is bigger. And, if you had something that was butting up right against there, you'd be surprised how much, this is at least an inch right here. You got to have extra space so things look like they're distributed properly across a bulkhead. I don't know if this makes any sense. It's all aesthetics. Well, it's a combination of aesthetics and a combination of utility, but it's something you have to think about. And I tell you this because I have made this mistake many times on many of my boat restoration projects in the past. In particular, the Oldberg 30 classic sailboat from 1972. That thing was a beautiful boat, and I put in a 120 electrical system. I put in a 12-volt system, upgraded it. And I was doing things kind of after the fact, adding switches, adding outlets, doing this and that. And it just had this hodgepodge kind of dog's dinner look to it at the end of the day. And it was all because nothing was planned out ahead of time. I just kind of added it after the fact. So in a case like what I'm doing, where you're rebuilding a boat from scratch, you're essentially building the boat from a clean template, right? From a blank piece of paper. It's worth it to take a moment and just kind of space it. It's worth it to take a moment, kind of space everything out and make sure that everything is going to fit properly come the finishing stages when you put it all together. I guess that's my whole point. So this is a great example here. Take a look at this. So there was originally a cutout here for an outlet that went there, right? Because the boat had a 120 system. But I don't know what size it was because it's not for a modern box, right? It's not for a box like there is today. So I enlarged it, I cut it out, I got everything looking good. This thing slides inside there. Now, behind this blue piece of tape, you can't see it here, but behind this blue piece of tape is actually an imprint of the hull number for the boat. On Albin 27, the hull number is on the side of the galley area here. imprinted into the pan liner, and it's also on the transom of the boat. So I failed to really think about how much space the trim ring here is actually going to take up going around here. So it's going to be on there. It's going to be real tight. And it just barely bumps up where this is embossed and says engraved inside here. I think it's going to look okay. But this caused me to start thinking about, well, what about the bathroom? I'm putting in an outlet over there. And there's going to be the switch for the head for the toilet. And the outlet is right below it. And if I put them too close together, this trim ring will overlap the other switch. So these are things you got to think about. And I'm glad I checked, because if I had put it in the place that I originally wanted, well, I would have been overlapping and it would have messed everything up. So my point is that you really have to kind of lay all this stuff out, dry fit everything, and proceed very, very slowly, because once you make those cuts, it's just going to be a hassle to try and repair anything, if you can even do it. So I am inside the head here, you can see. I'm inside the head here, and what I'm working on today, I'm inside the head here, and what I'm working on today is figuring out where the switches are going to go for the electric toilet and the shower sump, where these switches have to go. They're going to go on the bulkhead here of this this cabinet that I built right here out of Cuso board and fiberglass. And there are some hatches that go inside here. And then there will be switches. Countertop goes here. There are switches that go inside the cabinet here, kind of out of the way. And we got to figure out where they go, what is the position. And I think what makes sense is to put the shower pump switch here, closest to the shower, and the toilet switch back in this corner, behind me here. You can kind of see it. And that way, everything kind of has its place, and when you hit one, you don't actually accidentally turn the other one on. This seems to make sense. You can just reach back here and activate this. And they'll be out of the way, and the cabinets here, I think I would like to put in the hatches here just so you can see what the hatches look like. I think that's worth doing. Even though we won't permanently install them, because we're ultimately going to be running some plumbing lines here inside this cabinet. Okay, let's see here. Alright, so here we are. This kind of goes like so. And if we're looking at this, it looks like that. Alright, so this is the inside here. You can see the back of these here. Alright, so it's interesting. The plastic this is kind of some kind of yellow or cream color. I don't understand why that is. Maybe it's a different type of plastic. I bet it is. Alright. Well, it is what it is. Alright. And the shower pump is a switch that looks like this. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little dark in here. We got, let's try a little, I don't know if this helps at all.
And then the toilet switch looks like this. It comes with the toilet from Dometic. Okay. Remember, on my boat, all these bulkheads are made out of fiberglass with some sort of plywood coring, or perhaps they're made out of cusa board if it's something that I fabricated, like these cabinets inside the bathroom. We use the chopper to cut through and make the cutouts. If the plunge cutter blade is too wide, you can use a small file, trim the blade down so it's a little bit narrower so you can get into the tiny corners. In the case of round switches or something like that, we're going to go ahead and use a hole saw. It makes sense to tape off the surface before you start cutting so you don't chip up any paint or cause any problems with the gel coat. It's always better to cut the hole too small and then slowly make it larger so everything fits nice and tight. Sometimes it takes multiple passes, but it's worth it in the end if you take your time. Remember, cusa board has a tendency to kind of vaporize into a dust. Be sure to wear a mask. You're going to want to vacuum and clean everything as you go along. To make the pilot holes for the switches, I use a little jeweler's drill. This is a mini drill. It's powered off of USB. It's got a battery. It's very delicate. It allows you to get right up on, say, a small hole on a switch and make your pilot holes. You can come back later on and use a drill to do something bigger. All right, I've got 2 of the 3 120 volt electrical boxes, the cutouts. I got them done. I have 1 more to go. This one goes in the aft cabin, which is where I am right now. And trying to figure out where I'm going to put this so that it's accessible when all the cushions and everything is back inside here and this cabin's all finished out for sleeping. And in order to do that, I had to go get the aft cabin cowling, this piece of furniture that I made that goes up under this companionway here in the aft cabin, and it seals off the area where the diesel tank is from the sleeping quarters, right? It's like a cabinet that goes around this space, this 3-dimensional thing that kind of goes in all directions. And what I've just come to realize is that since I installed the headliner material inside the aft cabin and throughout the boat, well, the dimensions have changed. Everything has changed. And now the aft cabin cowling doesn't fit inside here. And it's got to be trimmed in order to fit properly. So it's like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because I can't do anything else until we get this done. May as well do it now. One of my rules of amateur boat restoration is to fix it when you find it. When you come across a problem, well, that's the time to fix it. Don't put it on the shelf and say, I'll deal with it later, because you may as well do it now. You don't know what other things are going to be revealed as you kind of get this taken off your list. So I need to trim this up and make this fit properly. And in the meantime, we can figure out where the outlet's going to go. It looks like this. Take a look. All right, I think this is a good point to stop for this episode. I know you like to have longer episodes, but I like to keep them very concise because we're going through a lot of information. It makes it very easy later on to kind of find an episode about a particular topic. Things aren't jumbled together. This year, in 2026, I recently completed an episode catalog. It's like a spreadsheet that has all of my episodes to date. There's about 150 of them, and they have descriptions, what date they were published, the titles, and a picture of the thumbnail. When you click on the thumbnail, it will take you to the actual video on YouTube. It makes it very easy to search and find topics. You can use the spreadsheet search function to find keywords, particular episodes about the topics that you're looking for.
Now, I make this catalog available to the workers. If you join my Patreon, if you're supporting the channel, you get this free. Plus, you get all of my ebooks free. Plus, you get contact with me and you get discounts on my consulting service if you're doing a boat restoration and you need some advice. Next episode, I'll be back talking about the cutouts and the switch positions for the overhead helm pod. Remember, there is this box that goes up here. It's going to hold the VHF radio, the horn, and it's going to be kind of a storage thing that's right above the helm here. And I'm going to be kind of finishing that all out, putting in the cutouts so that we can put all the switches and the radio and everything inside there. We'll cover that next time. And then we'll be on to what is probably the final cutout, the cutout for the stern thruster. The stern thruster project is going to be a big one. You're going to want to check that out. I'll see you next time. Stay motivated.
If you like these videos, please hit the subscribe button. These videos would not be possible without your support.